had no idea. I had zero idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how did you find out? Was this just?
Don't laugh. My
I'm
wife goes, Meredith goes, I can't believe I'm talking about this online. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Meredith goes, you don't look like your family. And I don't. I mean, if you saw my family, you would be like, I mean, they're all blue-eyed, and they're Irish and English and German, and I'm the only one with like olivey skin and big nose,
interesting,
and brown eyes, and we did your old ancestry test, so I did it.
Okay,
boom, and then I went, I don't know about this, and I did like 5 more, and they were all like, boop, and then some people, let's just say, some people confirmed this.
Okay. Oh my God.
Here's a funny story for Chris, Tony. Dennis Sandole many times said to me, I remember this. He said to me, Scott, he goes, your sound is too dark. He goes, you don't have an Italian. He goes, you don't have an Irish. You don't sound. He goes, I've had Irish students. I had Billy Bean and all these other people. He goes, you don't look like him. He goes, you got my nose. Hey, Dennis, you got my nose. You got that. You don't sound. He goes, I don't know. And he knew, evidently. he had sussed it out. So, and I would say, no, maestro. No, I'm, no, not Italian, By the way, I contacted Chris will know this guy. I contacted Joe Federico not long ago and told him that.
Oh, did you?
Laughed. Yeah.
Did he really?
He was laughing. He goes,
he's like, welcome home.
Yeah. He goes, Dennis knew everything, didn't he? With that voice. Yeah. Dennis knew everything, didn't he?
Well, that to me is so fascinating because okay, obviously there was an aesthetic that Dennis was seeing because he saw you every week.
Yeah.
But it went beyond that. And I've always been fascinated with this too. For as long as I can remember, I've always been fascinated with heritage and sound. Now, this isn't it's not about a race thing. This is really about, there's a connection between your DNA, your connection of your heritage. And as an artist, regardless of what our art may be, I've always felt that there was that, like if I'm listening to Yngwie, I'm like, yeah, he sounds Swedish. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I can hear where he's pulling the stuff from, but that's interesting that Dennis was actually able to listen to you play and say, and now, so dive into that for a second. Like when he said what did he say your playing was too dark?
He said you have a dark sound. He goes, your sound, the harmony, and the whole thing is dark. He goes, it's not Irish. He goes, and I remember him going, like, I've had Irish students, and you don't sound like that. He was very keyed into that, you guys.
And that's important that you said that, Scott, because Tony, on that point in Philadelphia, we're speaking Philly here, and the amount, it was such a magnet for so many different ethnicities that were coming in and doing certain things. And Dennis, of course, was as Scott says, he was maestro. So, he was the maestro. So he was getting this, it's just fascinating to me that is a thing,
But Tony, are you familiar with I'm sorry, I don't want to talk about things that you're not.
Oh, that's okay. I don't know anything anyway.
Okay, well, this teacher was, his name is Dennis Sandole, and he was a very, very esteemed jazz teacher in Philadelphia. He taught John Coltrane. He taught James Moody, Coltrane.
Was he a pianist?
He's a guitar player.
Oh, really?
But he played piano very well. Yeah, he went off he was self-taught. I mean, he was in Tommy Dorsey's band when he was a kid. I mean, he was brilliant. And played behind Sinatra, Billie Holiday.
Wow.
I mean, he played with Charlie Barnett. He was young. I mean, he was brilliant. He was a brilliant man. And he came back to Philadelphia and taught. And he taught, like I said, he taught Coltrane. He taught all these, Pat Martino, Jim Hall, James Moody. By the way, I have a friend named Gary Kalame, who's a great guy. He's a great keyboard player. I mean, Gary's brilliant. He used to play with James Moody. And James Moody would just talk about Dennis, like, oh, Dennis is, that was
Yeah.
the guy. That's the guy. So a lot of people, Tony, like came through. If you were Chris, would if you were in Philadelphia and you played jazz, it was like at some point you ran into him or you studied with him or you knew everybody kind of knew him.
Everybody knew he was.
Yeah, not everybody dug him. I mean, there were a lot of musicians that were not into him at all. It was a very distinct thing. But yeah, but that's what he had told me. And it's funny, you meant it was really fascinating. Yeah.
Wow.
And so on this subject, for Tony, your connection with Dennis in terms of, did you seek him out? So
yes.
and if you don't mind, because I love this, I love the way you've described this before, is what was a lesson like with Dennis Sandole?
Well, the first part, I mean, when I knew about him when I was a kid. I think I got Guitar Lore, one of his books, for my birthday, or I was a kid, and I was like, okay, I went when I was at university. I studied with somebody named Tom Giacobetti, who was brilliant.
Yes.
He was a student of Dennis's. Tom was brilliant, and what a great human being. He did a lot for me. I mean, it's funny, Chris, we talk about technique and all. I went through, the Paganini Caprices with him. I did the Dance and the Kreutzers, and I did Bach and Mozart. I did the Mozart piano sonatas with him, the Beethoven pianos. I mean, I did so much classical music and reading and chops with him. So the idea was, if I could get that together, I can get the Dennis, and I don't have to worry about technique. Like, that'll be out of the way, because I just wanted to focus
melodically.
That's it. I wanted to focus on the stuff that Dennis was really known for. It was like the harmony and the composition and the stuff. So that's now as soon as I graduated as an undergraduate, Tom had mentioned to me, he goes, well, what are you going to do when you graduate? And I said, well, I think I'm going to go over to Dennis. And he said, actually, that's a really good idea. He said something kind of funny. He goes, yeah, you'll understand that stuff. He goes, I never understood it. he was a character, Tom. He was a character, man. He was brilliant. He was brilliant. But I got his number. I forget how I did it, but I got his number and just talked to him. And he was like, "Come over." And he said to me the very interesting thing he said to me. And by the way, I guess it's germane to our conversation, the three of us, is he said to me, he goes, "Are you prepared to attain individuality in your music and on your instrument?" And I said,
wow.
Yes. I said, that is why I said, Mr. Sandole, that is why I'm contacting you. And he said, excellent. And we made the appointment. But that's all he said. He didn't say that much to me.
Right.
That's all he said. It was like, we're talking about art. I think he just seemed like an artist to me. It just seemed like when people go, oh, Dennis was, what's Dennis? And it's like, he's just an artist. He was just an artistic guy, an old school. Do you know what I mean, Tony? Like somebody who believed in like the old way, like the master apprentice,
right?
The old way. Like you talk about Ingve and the Paganini stuff. That's the way those guys trained. You would seek out a master.
You seek out the master.
That's why I'm here. Because I'm just listening to the two masters right here.
But
no, Scott's the master.
I will agree then. I will agree.
But it's funny because people ask me about Dennis. I'm like, I just think that man was interested in artistic. He was interested in art, and music is art. But he understood. But he always liked, oh, you have a record deal, that's great. And he would go, hey, look, my student Scott has 3 record deals and all this kind of stuff.
Wow.
But so he was like, as long as they're renewed, he would ask me about my gigs. What are you doing? What are you doing this weekend? I'd be like, I got 2 weddings and whatever. He'd be like, as long as they're paying you. Like he thought that was great. He's like, they're paying you. That's great. Wonderful. He viewed it as like, you do that for the money and we'll do the art. We'll do the art.
That's cool. Yeah.
Which is what you did, because through that, how long were you Is that how you felt with him? Was you were
Totally.
an apprentice?
Totally.
An apprentice.
Completely.
So
Right.
we're talking in. So I'm going to paint a picture. If you go back
and really quickly before you do that, I'll address. I hadn't answered the "what was it like" thing, but I'll address that. Keep going. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah. So an apprentice would come to learn a craft, and a lot of the times it was kind of just the early days were just witnessing this person do this craft. In this case, though, Dennis had a curriculum.
Yes.
That you immediately were driven into, and we'll talk about that. But the premise of that was that old world. I'll call it an old world way of learning, right?
Completely.
Okay. So go ahead, answer that.
Okay. Well, he didn't play. You would come in. He figured you could play.
Okay.
So
he never touched the guitar.
He played once for me. I had only been there a couple months, and he left. He was writing, and then he left. And he said, "Keep playing. I'm listening." He walks in the other room, and no, there were no amplifiers. You played acoustically, so even you had electric, acoustic, it didn't matter. By the way, the people that studied there, you would have cellists, upright bass, piano, voice, a lot of saxophone. So even though he was a guitarist, he taught it didn't matter. He was, so he would write your lesson. He went in the other room, and then all of a sudden he brought a guitar back, and I was like kind of shocked. And then he said, "Well, I want you to do I forget. So I want you to establish for this. We were working on. He said, I want you to work on this blues." He goes, "But establish a theme like this." And then he goes, and immediately he was like, "Put the melody in all the voices like this." So he would play the blues, and the melody was inside, it was outside. He thought like an orchestrator. It wasn't.
I was just going to ask you.
Yeah, he played like it was like Duke Ellington on the guitar. Like if you could kind of imagine what that would be like. It was like, and he was like like this. Yeah, It was like, so he had the theme, and he had the inside, outside, it like at once. I was like, that's pretty serious. That's like, if you can think and hear like that and know, that's pretty heavy. That's with chords, not like, like the melody, you're hearing the melody. It's in the inside.
Yeah.
The outside.
So he would break it into what? So what you have your voices, right? Your okay. I'm going to go the other way. Soprano, alto, tenor, bass, right?
Right.
So, but you were instructed at one point, right, to be able to put the melody in any of those voicings.
By the way, I did that for 10 years.
Jesus.
I grabbed onto that. Tom Giacobetti got me in. It's funny, funny Tom story. We're working on the Bach solo violin sonatas. So he goes, "Okay, here's the next one," right? He's playing, and Bach puts the melody. It's like he goes, he goes, "Melody inside." He goes, "Must have studied with Dennis." And then he's playing. He goes, "Oh, he's got the melody in the bass now. Must have studied with Dennis." I was pissing myself.